to the workshop. Today, as mentioned before, I'll have to go a little bit through the first few minutes because there were some technical difficulties. I hope you enjoy it. Today we're going to be talking about mastering Figma for design systems. My name is Bruno. I'm one of 3 advocates from the Friends of Figma Portugal group. I was joined that day with Flavio, and Julia was on the browser because Julia actually is now in Amsterdam. So today's outline and everything on this workshop, we wanted to go a little bit further from just what Figma can do for you, but what you can do in Figma, and how you can put your design systems to a next level. So we divided the workshop in 4 parts. I'm going to be talking up until like half of the first part, and then everything else is the pre-recorded workshop. Step 1 would be thinking beyond UI kits. How can you look at what design systems are beyond what everyone thinks they are, because UI kits are very widely recognized as design systems. Step 2, measuring your design system, which is very important for scale, which is our step 3, setting up for scale, components versus variants. And then step 4, powering up with Figma SUPAFAST, like our pal from many social networks, Xander Whitewest says, which is a great also resource. He has this amazing expression, but also content. And we're going to be talking about tools, plugins, tips, tricks, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay. So before we start, the recap. What is up with design systems? The fact is, design systems are not what they are not now what they were before. We started with the atomic design that Brad Frost made so popular, and many people still use, and many people still read his book and still read his content as the original state of a design system. Nowadays we talk about other stuff, like tokens are the latest trend in terms of information, right? So the fact is, design systems are very more intricate now. They have that first layer where you have the atomic design, but you now also have things like principles, like proper documentation and the ways that you should document your things. There's information like tokens, which kind of is documentation, but at a different level, at the layering name level and stuff like that. And eventually code, like how can your design system coexist with its code counterpart and stuff like that. So all of these things, all of these complexities went on top of how our design systems work, and kind of made it so that our job becomes also a little bit harder. But it's not that hard, and we're going to talk how you can do a good job and adjust to whatever makes sense to your workload, right? And luckily enough, we have great examples out there. We have a bunch of different websites and systems that give us information on design systems. One of them being designsystems.com, which is a Figma publication, and where you can find a lot of great examples like Airtable, Atlassian, GitHub Primer, Salesforce Lightning, Spotify Backstage, which is a really interesting case because it's not Spotify's front end or like their apps design system, but it's their internal tools design system, which is really cool. And this page specifically, you can also just go there and add your very own design system. So I'm just going to open the page real fast so that we can take a quick look at it. So here you can see designsystems.com from a Figma publication, and you have a bunch of articles, a bunch of different things that you can read, guides on typography, iconography, and then you have the links to the design systems from each and every one of these companies that they make available, which is really cool because most of those design systems that are down there are also duplicable in the Figma community, which is also what we're going to show you now, right? For example, the GitHub Primer is one of them. You can duplicate it. We already have, so let's just open it on Figma. There you go. Give it a little sec to ramp up. But here, basically what you get with this is a really cool quick look into the behind the scenes on how Primer Web works. You have a getting started page where it says what it is, how to use it, with some information on how to apply it with Figma. You have a demo page with a bunch of those components and layouts already built so that you can actually just look at them, inspect them, learn from them. And then you also have each and every one of these organized components here, where they also are great at documenting those, which with a bunch of information. Each one of those also has labels, as descriptions, as information on how they should be used. They use labels in the content that help you understand what you're looking for. There's a bunch of information here This is just for one component, which is action list plus overlay, but you have that for each and every one of them. Breadcrumbs, boxes, contribution graphs, forms, all of these are documented in a certain way so that everyone can just take value out of it, start playing around with it, learn from it, and there's a bunch of different things here, okay? But not only the ones that exist here are important, you can also find others online. And for example, another great example, although from the competition, is Adobe Spectrum, which is a really cool website. So if you head up to Adobe Spectrum, you're going to see a website that is really clean, simple, and very organized, that has a bunch of information and also their own downloads and everything, so you can explore it on Adobe XD, which is their own design system tool or their own design tool. But if you come to Spectrum, you have a page on principles that is very focused on it, giving you all the details with what are the principles, plus how do they apply in action, how they actually go out and exist in their own design system. And then if you start going into their foundation documentation, you already have a bunch of information of how they use tokens and what design tokens are, which is great. It tells you how those tokens then expand, what is the language of those tokens, what are the guidelines on how to use them. And then if you jump to other things like, I don't know, color, you have things like fundamentals, you have things like color systems, you have illustration here and tells you what the style of illustration is. They have bidirectionality, so things that include how do these products work for languages that are right to left and not left to right, like most Latin scripts are. So there's a bunch of information here that you can learn from. And like these websites, again, we're lucky enough to have a bunch of great examples around here. GitHub, Adobe, Spotify, Google Materials available everywhere, Salesforce, Atlassian, Uber also has a bunch of different things shared out there, Airtables, Shopify, Apple has their own design system shared, and even when they don't have it in Figma, Joey Banks makes sure that you guys have at least the UI kits so that you can play around with. IBM, Intuit, MailChimp, all of these tools, most likely you can just go to Google, write the name and design system, and you're going to find documentation, you're going to find something out there that you can use. It's really cool, it's really simple, and it's great for you to learn, okay? We had the questions block here, but it doesn't really matter because you guys are not going to ask questions. So step one, thinking beyond UI kits. What is there beyond UI kits? Many people don't really think about design systems beyond the fact that they are UI kits with an extra juice to it, right? Like you can have components, but if you don't have ways on how you use those components, that becomes a difficulty. So here's what we did. Like as we showed before this slide, we want to talk about how these UI kits are the baseline, but then you have things like principles, like documentation, like talking about tokens and how you can do that side by side with code. We're not going to be talking much about code, but you get the point here. So first things first, why would you guys need all of that crap? Well, you probably don't, okay? It's the reality here. Not everyone is going to need all of this, but it doesn't hurt to know. You never know where you're going to be tomorrow. You never know if your company is going to grow. You never know if you're going to be joining a team that it's on phase 1 of a design system or phase 2 or phase 20. So having all of this information is really important because it helps you understand on how to better collaborate and work with other people in your design systems, right? And first things first, who defines what? How is your design system defined and who defines what goes into the design system? That's very important because that changes a lot the way that you work with design systems. How are you building those design systems? Are they centralized? You have a design system team, or do you have decentralized with a design system that it's being fulfilled with elements from different teams like brands, products, services, whatever? Or is it even a decentralized multi-brand system, which is even worse because that means that whoever is building those components and supporting those components needs to make sure that those components work for multiple styles and channels, right? So how you're building it affects a lot of the way how you do it. But even though that affects the way that how you do it, some of the baselines are going to stay the same. And first ones are principles, right? Maybe starting to look at what principles can be shared between all those teams, all those systems, will help. And for example, we have here 4 questions that help you define those principles, those baseline ideals that define what you can build with. What does your products or brand stand for? What are the users of your products? What do you want to achieve with your products, and what type of experiences do you want to build? These are very simple yet very complicated questions to answer. They are here because they are good baselines to start thinking at what is that architecture, that those keywords that define how I build things, how my team builds things, the things that we need to look back at to confirmation, for confirmation bias, if you want to, on am I taking the right direction based on my design system, or am I doing it wrongly? And then, now that you define your principles, start testing them. How can you apply them? If you reverse them, do they fail? Are they actually not principles and like anti-principles? Can you test those principles now, or only after you start building? And how are the experiences you expect to come out of each principle? If you can test them out, if you can dream them out, whatever, okay? So all of this is very important because principles tend to serve as those undeniable truths about how you guys want to build things. And although I'm calling them undeniable truths, the fact is they can also go down, and you can renew and update your principles alongside the building of your system. It just means that those principles will always be there to help you define better what you're building. And while you're at it, start building. Building is a keyword here because if you don't do anything, what will happen is eventually your design systems will start to fail, because there's a lot of people that with these new methodologies just enter analysis paralysis and they don't really grow the design system. They just get stuck at the principle phase, and that's not a good thing. So while you're at it, start building. And do it your own way. Start building components as you go, design the whole thing and then componentize. Do a bit of both, but document everything that you're building, right? And this is where you can do in very different ways, but it's very important that you try and register what you are constructing and why you are constructing it like that, right? So questions like why you build the component that way, what is that component for, what is that component or style you define for, how does the component behave on interaction, what kind of interactions does that component take? All of those things are very important. And then you can start using different things to do it, like labels on your buttons. You can have little arrows saying like this is an icon, this is a couch in this case, which is, yeah. You can have the redlining with the sizes of your paddings and information like that, the distances between elements. And use the tools that are available for you, right? Like Figma and any other tools, many of them already have tools for documentation, and you should use those. So let's look at Figma's ways how to do it. Yes, this is when we get our hands on. And we're going to talk about this by building a really cool thing or a simple thing, which is a button. So let's jump here. Let me just start by showcasing what we have here, which is our friend of Figma Portugal Design System starter, which we'll eventually share with everyone. And we start by documenting the different parts of the process for defining principles as the first one with questions and notes. You have a space for your principles and your principles in action with information to help you around the why and the how, which are the principles and principles in action. We have a full palette of styles that we already tokenized by giving them proper token names, from typography to brand colors to semantic colors, which are the best example of tokens because these colors are like level 2 tokens, where these colors are defined as colors that bring some meaning to things, so their name is based on that meaning. And then you have places to store your components, store your combo components, which are like more complex components, and your layouts. Let's start by doing the basics. Let's start by building a button and document it. Okay, we get a label, we come here and we write, for example, a text button label. I think this is a good start. Okay, first things first, we can actually already use a style because we have a style. So a button would be about a paragraph size 300, and it already takes all of that information there. It already tells you that the body text paragraph 300 is part of the information. Also, we wrote button label because it's an easier hint that this content is editable. It's not just CTA or anything. You can just change whatever goes on the button label. Cool. Okay. Now, if you press Shift A, you can use an auto layout to now create a frame around this button. You can adjust the measurements here on how you want that frame to work. Like I'm going to put it at the center alignment. It's with an horizontal layout. I'm also going to have the background. Don't worry about the white text. We're going to fix that in a bit. I'm going to make the rounded corners here. So it's 15 pixels because the height is 30. So dividing it by 2, I'm going to put it with 15 pixels. And then the frame name can go, for example, button. Wait, I'm just going to, sorry, something went wrong here. Rename button / primary, and this is already documenting something, right? Like you're saying that this is a primary button. Now let's use our semantic colors to start making decisions. So the background style, we already have a button CTA background style, which is this orange, and then we also have a color for the text, so we can select the text and change the fill color to CTA button text. There you go. Now that we have done that, we can also, for example, fix our dimensions. So I prefer my button like this. And at this point, we're already having a bunch of information in this, right? We have a button that is a button primary with a button label, where the colors on the button are primary CTA button, text, and background. So it tells us what type of colors we're using, already tells us what the component is also. And now let's start documenting. First things first, if you don't know how to document using those tools, never fear, you have text boxes. So you want to tell everyone that this is a button primary, you can just write button primary. But let's say that you want to add some other information. You can actually just throw a different block of text, and I'm just going to make the font really small here so it's like notes under this. You can add other information like radius, 15 pixels, and then on this case specifically, horizontal padding, 16 pixels, vertical padding, 8 pixels, and so on, so on. So you're already having some information here. Let's say that you want to have some sort of note on what the color is being used. You can actually just draw a little arrow. Let me just use it like this. I'm gonna put this arrow with the white color so it's more like the text that we have here, and you can actually just drop a text here saying CTA text or button CTA text is the token of the color, for example, right? Like this is the name for that, or better yet, let me just double check this. I think it's CTA button text, so wrong. Let me just CTA button text. Now you have the label here that is aligned with whatever goes there, and it's the token of that color, which is great. You could even use something like the cardinal there, so it's more identifiable as an ID, which is great. But you can also do a lot of cool stuff when you start using the component tools, okay? So I'm going to turn this into a component by clicking the Create Component button up there. Now that I've made the component, I can actually come here where it says Button Primary, where I can change the name. I can just go to Component Details and have some descriptions. In this case, how to use this component. Use this only for main actions. Easy. What happens now? Every time that we have a copy of that button, there's a note there that says use this for only for main actions. But if you notice, there's also a thing that says link for documentation. Okay, so what does this mean? We can actually have links to either Figma files or other files that gives documentation on this button. So I can just copy, for example, the link of the button itself, put it on documentation, and now the button in every copy has that information for the developers to click on this button here, and that leads them to the documentation that they want. There's also a bunch of information already here, but like the names of the colors and everything, this will help people understand what we're talking about because that helps a lot. More, now that you have a button with some labels, with the radius and everything, you can also start adding some extra information by using the new properties, the component properties. So, for example, in this case, since we have a button label, we can actually go to the content section of a text box, apply a text property and call it label. And now every time that you're editing your button, you have a label that is there as an editable field. And when you inspect there's a label in the component properties that says the content of the button, so that anyone that needs to come look for that content is there. Aside from that, you can also do things like, for example, let's say add icons. I'm gonna just fetch a couple of icons real fast from, I'm gonna use Lucid icons, and now I can just pull a couple of icons from here. So let's say that I want the icon for album, and it's gonna give me that icon. Then I want the icon for accessibility, and last but not least, we'll see the icons. And I want the icon for armchair, which is that beautiful armchair icon that I already had before. So now that I have these 3 icons, I'm just gonna rename them icon/icon name so that they become part of an icon collection. I'm also gonna do one thing, which is I'm gonna reduce the size of them because the font is 14 pixels. The text box is 14 pixels high, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. So I'm gonna make them also 14 pixels high in terms of text box. Maybe change the dimensions here. Now I'm gonna do a quick trick that has to do with how icons react to color changes. We're gonna talk about that later. Let me just fix this icon. Oh, wait, this one broke. Okay, just gonna fix this in a different way. Give me a second. There we go. This is an icon, and then this one too. Union selection and rename it icon. Okay, I have my icons ready. I'm going to change their colors to the button text primary so that they have the same background color, and I'm going to use the option to create multiple components to have this ready. Okay, now that I have my small icon library, I can just add an icon to my button here, and that means that now I actually can add a couple of other properties that will also serve as documentation. In this case, first one, we can use the opacity of the layer to create a Boolean property that turns the icon on and off. So I'm just calling it icon with a true, so it's going to turn icon on and off. And then you can also use an instance property where you can give the icon, you can select the icon directly from the properties, and that also will show on documentation. So let's use a little arrow here, which is a really unique trick that we've been sharing on Twitter for a few weeks now, which is really cool to document these things. And now if you go to your button here, you know that you have a label, an icon, and then the icon selector. Now when you're here, you can get that. So when someone needs to design your button, for example, you can see that they can edit the text here. They can decide if they have or no icon, or if they want to change the icon, they have a little list here that shows up only when the icon is active, which is great, right? So now I can come here, I can say accessibility, I can change the text directly here and not on the label, say accessibility, for example. And here you have your button working with documentation here, which is cool, which is then you have also, if they have an icon or not, what icon it is, and what the text is, also on the documentation for the developer, which is great. And even if you want to evolve this into a different level, which is, for example, having secondary buttons, you can just select your main button and click on Add Variant, and then using the variant properties, you can just come here and say that this is the button type. This button now would be a button secondary, and since you already have all of those styles pre-prepared, you can start changing things. So the button secondary stroke, the button secondary text, and I'm gonna have a background just because the background here is blue, so blue on blue doesn't work, and now we have a button secondary with icons that also work. So even if I want to make this into a secondary button, it works. Only thing now is, since this is a variant based on the first button, it also comes with some of the documentation for this first button, including the descriptions. So we can use this and edit now and say for secondary actions. And now you can see that now we use this only for secondary actions, which is great. One last thing that I didn't talk about is you can also have that documentation on styles. So if you click on the background and you have the styles on your library, you can click here, you can have information. For example, on CTA button background and CTA button text, you have color to be used on primary button text, and here you have color to be used on primary button backgrounds. CTA button text also has the contrast, and all of that information here is here. So there you go. There's a bunch of different things that you can do to document your components right from the get-go, from the name from the names of their layers, from the properties on their buttons, from labels on the text, with text, regular text on the side, or even using the documentation fields that Figma gives you so that you can actually document those buttons. And with that, we'll get back to the pre-recorded. Have a great workshop.
Start including processes. And I know these are a bore, but you can actually automate a lot of them with stuff like tools in Figma and what's not, or creating a document that is already templatized to work with the same structure. So every time you start a project, you're using the same page structure, for example. Or if you're building your components and you want to store your master components, it's as easy as right-click, move to page, and you can create a master component page where you just order them all. It doesn't take that much work, and it will make your designs cleaner, your information really simple, and that can also, again, be done somewhat easily in Figma. Some tricks might be, for example, if you have a template to start your project, if you go to a project, you can actually pin a file on the top of your project with a right click. So if you have a template that it's easy to duplicate, pin it on the top. Every time you need to start, just click on the dots or like right click, duplicate file, and that's your starting up file. If you have a geeky designer developer like I have in my team, he creates stuff like plugins that create covers for me, which is amazing because now I just need to write the type like name of the file, and the whole thing just documents by itself, which is amazing. And again, Figma is a tool that can expand in a lot of different ways. You can use very simple processes, very complex processes, depending on what you align with your teams, but make sure that you use this type of stuff. And then even the tool kind of helps you. If you ever need to go and analyze, for people that actually have org accounts like me, you have org analytics, which allow you to go back and double check, for example, if components are being used or not, if they are being broken or not. And that also gives you some notion of if the work that you're doing is good or not. Well, this one, creating communication channels, is one that I love, and it's one of the processes that I actually really, really like about the way that I work with my team. Again, I have a geeky design developer guy called Hoy, and he created a plugin that is actually on the community for everyone to use, and we have seen a buttload of teams all around the world using it, which is a really simple thing. So there are tools inside Figma that we don't use much. One of them that I'm saying here is version control. Like, you guys love having your files saved, right? Did you know that you can actually document in version control and put names and descriptions? It's awesome. So you can actually just create a description for your design system. In this case, show version history. Here you can see that I have my view one with a little description saying this is the initial launch of design system. It currently includes baseline styles, button and link components, an iconography kit, 3 unicorns, 1 pack of cigarettes, layout components, your soul, expecting updates for the next release, card components, carousel gallery, avatars, and the It clown. But the fact is, I could do this really fast. It's as simple as Control-Alt-S, and you can have the version history with a little bit of documentation. We do this a lot at OutSystems, and Hui also helped us turn this into a really cool process. So if I now go and say view 1.1 and describe what changed, which is added a new button, we can use a really cool thing to then bring this information for everyone. So when I talk about here, create the sync channel on Slack, Discord, Teams, announce library, publish moments, use comments as a sync tool. Comments are easy, everyone can use them. You can see the comments. For example, I have a comment here. Let me see. There you go. I comment for myself. Cool. We should replace secondary button to match our secondary color, so we can use this as like communication between everyone else. Even if it doesn't happen, there's a comment there, you know that needs to happen, it's an action point. But for example, for the part where you need to communicate to your team, in this case, Hui has created the version history, the Slack plugin. It tells you how it works. This thing is already pre-built by me. There's a little guide there on community. You click on get versions. And if the plugins are working, yeah, Figma is not going to allow me to do this, is it? Oh, come on. Okay, but if the plugins would be working correctly, what would happen would be this. Just give me a second here. So I have a little design system log here, and Figma, you click on the button there, and we get updates directly on the channel with the information that we want. If you want a ping, like add channel, you can also build that. The fact is, this is a mix between building a workflow on Slack plus having it linked through APIs on Figma. The plugin is public, it's easy to use, and creates this type of documentation. And we use it at OutSystems every time we have a push on our design systems. We have a channel log ever since it started. We were trying to use that channel log also to communicate a little bit, so we were pinning messages, but we found out that Slack only allows for 100 pin messages. So now we don't use that, and we just use it for the log. But it really works, and it kind of gives you a quick update. Like if someone changes something, you get that information right there. It's easy, and it's really good to keep track of all the changes that you did. You can scroll up and down even on Slack and see those changes in a long time, and it's really interesting. Yeah, it's not going to work. Sorry about that. So that's it. So create communication channels is also another very important part, in my opinion. And honest to God, saves a lot of time and saves a lot of conversations that are not needed. If you get that thing, and if you document it good enough so that anyone understands, okay, there were changes, at least that's enough for them to understand why they have like a new update in the next time that they open Figma, right? So it doesn't cost that much time. And then while building, also define owners. You guys remember when we talked about about the teams in charge, but the fact is, independent of these structures, we really need to start defining who owns what or who should be in charge of these types of processes. So the bigger the team, the bigger the mess, and it's going to become really hard. We found out that not the hard way, because again, I had a geeky developer designer guy that kind of started doing it from the start, and he is a great owner of our design systems. But the fact is, that team structure should be aligned with a clear definition of what are or who are the design system owners and how they interact. And it can be that it's just one team that starts building the design systems, like much like what we did, and that person that is on that team owns, or multiple people own that design system and the components, and they start building it. Or it can be that it's cross teams and everyone starts pitching in and throwing in ideas. Or it can even be that you actually have the design system team, as we talked before. So this is always going to be different, but having those people that you know are in charge of each part or of a specific part of the design system is really critical, in my opinion. And not forgetting that it is a two-way conversation, okay? No design system exists without a product that you can build on top of or test on. Very important. If you build a button because it looks pretty, it doesn't mean it works in the product. It can be gigantic and you don't know. I've been teaching UX classes right now with people that are mostly brand designers. Honest to God, they don't notice when they build like gigantic buttons for like really small UIs. And the fact is, those conversations need to happen when someone is building a design system. If you actually have praised billboards, a design system team, which is amazing. Not many companies have just a design system team. The people that actually are building those two sides need to communicate a lot to make sure that things are working and that things are evolving in the right direction. So don't forget that these are conversations and not monologues. So to recap, yeah, there's the UI kit, has all these beautiful components that we do like that button, but all of this information can be added up on top, and actually that is what makes a design system. Questions anyway? Flavio, do we have questions in the chat?
There is a question from Rita Souza.
Hi, Julia.
Hey, I'm here, finally.
Tell me.
I can put it here live.
Let's see if I can see. Is it? She went down.
It's in the answers already.
It's in the Q&As?
Yes. She asks, any tips on how to create a better engagement with the documentation? From my experience, designers tend to avoid reading it. And this is very funny because I heard the same thing this week, but for the developers. So it was trying to do, to engage the documentation. And she was like, the company has a lot of documentation. The problem is nobody reads it, nobody consulted. So this is a very good one.
Yeah, but it's hard to help with that. Honest to God, put fun into these processes. Put games, put things that you feel like might be cool for people to just see when they're actually doing this. Put jokes like I just did with the unicorns, the cigarette pack. I don't know, but having those type of interactions is hard, and we know it. Many designers just want to know that things are working, and having that information there is just putting your mind at ease. It doesn't mean that the components and things are working as you expect, but I think nowadays, if you are working with people that are just serving off design systems, most likely you need to make it so that they don't actually have to think about the documentation. Components, if possible, built as they work, as much as interactions as they can have and stuff like that. I think that's the best option. You don't need to put excessive effort into how they need to understand if they work or not. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. And yeah, that's the best that I can answer to this. Fun fact, in case you haven't seen it, I think it was during Schema, Figma's conference. Sorry, I mix up everything because I'm always talking about both of them. Figma's conference for design systems. I think they actually brought Netflix to the stage with their design system, Hawkins. Great name, because great show. And the fact is that they have lightsabers, I think, or swords inside the design system, just for fun, like components they can just use when they're kind of bored and having chats, and they kind of like go sword fight, and that's it. And it's like a silly thing, but the fact is those fun things, those fun moments include some humanity in the processes. And Figma is really good at it, right? Like fun is a keyword on all their products. And if you look at FigJam, that's like the most well built in that sense. Like it's just fun. Today I had a session with, again, 100 designers, and we were doing a junk kaiju. You guys know what that exercise is? Junk kaiju or trash dinosaur is getting everyone into a file, give them a bunch of literal trash images, and now build the monster as a team. And it's like just fun, and it was a great exercise for people to break barriers, try to start and understand how they can collaborate and bring communication into those processes. And if you can put those things into documentation processes, or if you can put those things into onboardings for designers to join your company, I think that's the best way. Even developers, they have fun anyways, right? And if you have a lot of geeks and nerds, just tell them that you can actually play D&D inside Figma. There's a bunch of plugins that help you, including like map creators. So like there's always something that you can do. Okay, step 2, measuring your design system. And this is really, really hard one. So first question, do I need a measuring tape? No, you don't need a measuring tape, but yeah, you probably need a calculator. And that's a very simple, like 6-year-old joke with the boobs on the calculator, but people don't get it, so. Right. Yeah. So, but why and how? Well, the fact is, design systems don't actually have one size fits all at this point. And in Figma specifically, we need to really be careful on the way that we build it. Today, we had a very bad day for people who had heavy files, for example. And for the last few weeks, actually, it's like the tool is very solid, but for some reason they've been having a few issues here and there on performance. Happens. The thing is, performance and scalability are very difficult to handle the moment you start growing and growing and growing your design systems. So every tool has its limitations, so Figma will not be different. Figma is a browser-based tool, and we're going to talk about what that brings with it. And when it's setting up your design systems, you actually need to adjust to your reality. Not everyone is going to have a single design system or a multi-brand design system or a component design system. Like there's a bunch of stuff there. So starting with performance, Figma is a browser-based tool, as I said, and every browser has its limit on active memory limit. Active memory limit right now on Figma is 2 gigabytes. You can actually use this thing, and I'm going to show you real fast, where you can just type resources and you can see resource use on the top here on the left, and it tells you how heavy is your file, how many layers it has. So this is really cool when you need to check if it's getting too heavy or not. But Figma also has some support systems that will tell you if you're getting too close to the 2 gigabytes. They start warning you at 50% capacity, 60, 75, and after 75, you're at the risk of actually being too heavy for the browser. You're going to have to restart a lot of times. So that means that the more complex design systems get, most likely you're going to start to have building your design systems into different files, like one library with everything. That you really need to understand how that performance then is balanced with your components or your libraries. And what does that mean? Again, let's test it out. Oh yeah, I remembered why I shouldn't click the buttons here. It goes to a page in the presentation mode. There you go. I need to just come here and click again on my slides. Sorry about that. And there we go. But here is what I'm going to do. Let's say that you want to build your design systems, and there's this bunch of icons here, and you need to put them somewhere. Icons are a great example of something that you don't really need to have in your centralized library file. Icons are not always used. You can have a library for it. Putting your icons into a different file is not a problem. And now with using them in components, as I'm going to do with move them away, publish them on a new file, and Figma takes care of reattaching components for you. So you shouldn't be afraid of those type of things. So I'm just going to really fast rename all of these to icon / their icon name. Turn them all into components, and multiple components, my mistake. And I'm just gonna come here, put one of these into my and everything cool library. Publish all of this. I haven't published anything. Let's see if this doesn't crash. It's not going to work, isn't it? It's just going to take the fun out of it. Woohoo, it worked. Okay, so the fact is, now that we started doing this, and you can look at how these things are working, you really need to we need to bring the icons out. How can we do it? Right now, the Figma is as simple as, so let's see if I have that somewhere here. Yeah, that's where you have it. You can create a new file. And let's see if it loads rapidly. It loaded rapidly. Oh, background not going to dark mode. I don't like it. Icon library. That's a new name. You can come here to your design file. Do this. And publish the library. And in theory, if I'm not mistaken, this component reattachment should have been happened. Let's see, no. And I messed up, but yeah. That's what happens when I haven't done it in a while. But essentially, in theory, you would be able to do this thing where you pick up the components that you built, put it in a different library. Figma has a system that you can reattach them, and basically you don't lose access between those things, right? So yeah, great thing about having an icon library is that it's actually on and off. So if you don't need icons, you can come here and literally just be give me a second here. I'm trying to understand why I don't have access. Might be because it's using the wrong account. No. Oh, because I didn't publish the library. That's nice. Let's see if it works. Okay, library published. There you go. So now you actually have an on and off library somewhere on for the Figma. And yeah, no, it's not working. Don't ask me why. Probably again Figma issues. But having this as a separate library is not a bad thing. You basically end up having a resource tool that you can turn on and off only by need basis. Icons are a great example for that. We're going to talk about a few other things, but that's it. And again, sorry about that. It's not a good day to use Figma, apparently. Scalability. When building libraries, and how do you optimize to scale? Is your design system simple, complex, or multi-brands? Do you have a design system that is a template for customers, which if you work for an agency, I've heard so many people complain on Discord about this. Like, they don't know how to handle design systems for customers. They don't know how to create a templatized design system that they can just like shift really fast. And that's actually quite easy with Figma. It's just the mindset on how you need to build it. Sometimes it's a little bit different. And then what's your strategy around it? Do you want to create an MVP of that design system? So like a really simple thing, or do you actually need to more granular access to those libraries like the iconography, right? So the fact is there are several examples. The first one, and everyone starts more or less with this, the simple system, and it's a single library. You have one file, you start building up, you start doing things, you put it in there. You can have your styles there, you can have your buttons there, you can have your links there. And you kind of go, as many people tend to go, using the atomic mindset, where you start with like simple components, complex components. There are some people that work with layouts, others don't, but you can put a lot of stuff into one file. But at a certain point, if your components start getting complex, the file gets heavy, it doesn't actually help you work. So that's when you're most likely going to start entering the complex system, and you start having multiple libraries for whatever you need, right? Today, the example that we're going to do is a simple, but it kind of has all of these, right? It has styles, it has icons, it has layouts, it has components, it has a bunch of different things. But the fact is, creating that design system for your team most likely will start getting heavy. So you create a project, or if you're in an org team, maybe have a team for your design systems. It's not a bad practice. And then start sharing your libraries there. Helps a lot with that. And then you have to the multi-brand system or composed libraries. And this my fair people, this is the nightmare. This is the nightmare, but it's a really cool one to try and figure out, which is when you start to try to understand not just how your basic components enter on layouts, but the fact that you actually need really, really basic components that have whatever is core to your brand, and understand what are the layers that you can then update, edit, and put on top, right? So let's say at our systems, what we have is we have two core libraries, one called brand that has our brand fonts, our brand colors, and a couple of other stuff, some basic things. And then we have one called web, which is basically baselines for web components. Those are not even like designed at all. That's just like the structure that says we can have an icon on the right, an icon on the left, text on the middle, with an auto layout controlling the whole thing. And sorry, just give me a second here. I have a message from someone that is coming to the workshop. They're not coming, their flight was delayed. See, people coming to flight, see this workshop, I'm so happy. Yeah, probably they're gonna have dinner afterwards with us. And the fact is, those very simple components that we use, the SCAR components, are incredible for scale. Issue though, new component properties broke all of that. New problems to solve. But the fact is, if you create at least very good documented components, like those base components, will help you a lot with when you start building those top layers. Even if it's just mostly on styles, which helps a lot, like defining all your fonts and colors for the brand specifically on one point, like baseline brand. And then you can replace those with whatever comes from your sub-brands or your sub-products. It helps. It's not that difficult, and it saves a lot of time. And I guess that's it. So to recap, yeah, performance and scalability, trying to understand how big, small, how heavy, how dispersed is your design system, and eventually starting to look at how can you actually set those things up for success, right? And yeah, questions anyone?
Out of curiosity, do you use the base components, concept, or the main component, edit it, and then use it for the other sub-brands?
Yes. So what we did originally, and now we're actually on a phase of rebranding and restructuring. So we're actually probably going to just redo a bunch of the libraries from the start, from the get-go, and also very complex processes and building some websites with technologies. We couldn't actually just replace our CSS. So we actually had to like do a matched styles from the old brand and the new brand without changing names and stuff. So that creates a lot of complexity. But the fact that we have those base components and those base styles all defined in components saves a lot of time when building those things, because we have some of those, like icons are pre-linked to whatever you want because they're connected to correct libraries. Typefaces already come correct. Even if you forget to style them, at least they have a default correct font. Might not be the styling, but we know that you have that type of stuff. And it also includes all the elements that you might be needing for one system or the other. And that's the thing, like what we have more difficult with at OutSystems is the fact that on our web property specifically, we work with a very commercial site that has very little interaction, that is basically just reading things, clicking on videos, and filling up forms. And then on the other side, we have forums. We have a marketplace of components. We have Q&As and ideas, and it's very interactive. It has very small UIs and on a lot of elements because of the information density. But we all use the same baseline components. We all use the same baseline iconography libraries. And that's because, again, the work of creating that baseline helped us a lot to understand what actually was shared between all of us and saves a lot of time on building things. Other questions? Julia, do we have anything on the chat?
Yes, I do. There is a good one about tokens. It's from Gabriel, and he says, how specific go to about building the tokens, how headless be, like color.accent.one or color.button.primary. I think we get in here about components tokens, right?
Yeah. That's a really hard question, honest to God, because not all systems work with the same type of tokens. At OutSystems, what we started doing is try to create that with our new system. So our brand colors are based on numbering systems, which are not as cool as calling them like by their brandy names, because all our colors are actually now named after gemstones. For some reason, I called it the Figma Design System because I'm a Star Wars geek. And if you guys don't know what a Kyber crystal is, shame on you. And but the thing is, most likely with the basic IDs, the basic like color accent 01 as he has here, being a good enough token for most systems is not bad, because that basically just tells you that color is always the same between all of them. And if you change it, you're changing the X code behind it, and no one's going to know if it's different or not in the system, right? All you need is a class that works on different coding languages. So that class is what you're putting on that token. The thing is, as more complex those components are going to be, you're going to basically end up with a bunch of classes piled up together. So it's good to actually have those different levels if you have more complex systems, where you're basically kind of jump to a second degree, and you say, okay, this is a button. The button has a tokenized name because it already piles up button color, background, button color, text, or something like that. Tokens still are more applied to styles than components, but the fact is those classes, if you can put them all into one more recognizable class that it's easier for example, developers to do, it's better. So when you have stuff like this, color accent 01 versus color button primary, the fact is some of those colors will need to be semantic, as in the developers or the people that are building need to know what they are. So it's good to have those button primary, button secondary type of things. But most times in smaller design systems actually just need the first level. So you have something that's easy to replace, not anything else. Okay, and then Rita Souza, if you want to read it, Julia, you're doing a great job being the moderator online.
Okay, so Rita asked about core components. They are afterwards themed in a local file, are not affecting maintenance. How do we track them? Any ideas of how to solve this? It's a base component.
They affect maintenance. They affect maintenance for sure. But the fact is, it kind of is still better sometimes than just not having them. The idea with core components usually is that they are stripped of too much information, right? Again, they are just the bare bones. It's like if you're building a component with a core component, they would literally be the bones. It doesn't have the flesh, it doesn't have the skin of the component, it doesn't have the colors, it doesn't have too much styling, it just has whatever goes on left, right? It's like building the architecture of the thing. So it is bad on a level when you build them and you actually need to update them, because that means that once you update that, you're going to need to go to the next library after that and update that. And if that library is updated, then the next library after that needs to be updated too. It's a sequential system. Again, by the image that I shared before, it kind of like flows. So everything that happens on the first one, it happens on the second one, it happens on the third one. So it creates change, it creates maintenance. But the fact is, it's still faster and simpler than actually having to go to each one of them and do copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, right? So if you have a system where your UIs have a very complex listing system, as like a table with a bunch of fields, if you need to add one field on the core component, you can add it and actually not break everything else from that point on, because you can put it on the core component event from the ground up, so that when you publish it and you update on everyone else, they're just going to have a new hidden component that doesn't break your other layout and doesn't show up. So it's faster than actually having to do all the others. And then you can just build whatever you need to build on top of that core component that has the new field that all other systems will have. So it's not easy to maintain, but it works to a certain degree. Now, again, component properties, kind of screw that structure because core components don't work. Component properties work on a first level, so now we're starting to have to rethink on how, in Figma specifically, we use that. But it's still a very interesting process to have that idea of what a core component at least is, even if it's defined as that baseline structure, so that you can at least have that every time you need to build a new component. Let's say that you have a library for core components, you update that library based on whatever your system needs, and then you just kind of pull it, detach it from the instance, and build your new component, and that still works somewhat fast. So yeah, it's heavy on maintenance, but it's still better than not having that at all. Any more questions on the room? Everyone okay? I know this is heavy, a lot of information, a lot of like theoretical stuff, but now we're actually gonna get into the exercise stuff. Changing setups, hoping that nothing goes down, and you have space there, right? And let me just do a quick camera check so that we actually both show up, because we're going to be both speaking, so let's see how this goes.
Hey everyone, I'm Flavio. I was in the back.
Let's put the microphone just so that everyone can hear. And by the way, can we get feedback on the audio on the line? Are you guys listening to us correctly? Ooh, everything okay. Best feedback. Okay, setting up for scale, and now if you guys want to pull your laptops and try to follow along or try to mimic some of the things that we're going to do, this is the time. Basically building a bunch of different things with one end goal, which is build a basic like blog type page with a couple of components that we're going to be building side by side right now, and that's essentially it. We're going to go a couple of stuff, and you're going to see some good practices on building components, some alternative new practices using stuff from the latest update like component properties, and some cool practices like using animations pre-built into instances and stuff, so you don't really waste so much time building those, right? So question number one, but shouldn't we only use new stuff? And for those that are here, we just talked about is doing break. No, not always. You should be using new stuff when building things. Here's why: because different components, different needs. Okay, it's not that when we're building systems like this, using the latest Figma features is bad. It's never bad. Like if you can use them, but think before using them. Many times, even the changing of a component to start using new features might bring you a hell of loads and loads of work to go back and do that for every single thing that you actually need to update. And it's a maintenance nightmare, much more than core components, for example, when you actually want to do this to your entire system. So think well before building and know that some components actually work by themselves with the baselines and the basics that the systems allow, and we don't really need like everything new. But first things first, let's start with the basics, and let's build some buttons, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna come here. I'm actually gonna delete these that we did here, and I think between me and you, Flavio, we can probably do a few cool things here. So building buttons is, again, one of the best examples as a really simple way to do things. Let me just also bring the icon here because we actually need the icons to be around here. Wait. Here we go. Sorry. And why buttons are always used for this type of exercises is very simple. They have very much componentization for just one small thing. The fact is, buttons as being the main drivers to action many times are also very versatile in meaning. Therefore, there are several formats or several things that you can do on buttons that usually can be the basic. It can showcase you the basics of how to use auto layouts, component properties, and stuff like that in a really simple way that then you can scale up to your other systems. So, Flavio, I don't know if you want to start building your own button right now.
I can. One simple trick: the fastest way to build a button is just like super fast, like Xander. You just press T, you write your button label, Shift A, and you get auto layout. Now you can just select. Let's put a field just to see it. Change the color of the label. Right. All right. Now we have the button. You can add more space on the sides. It's all right on the top and bottom. So okay, let's put a border radius, and you have a button here. Now, if you want to scale the button, it's pretty. Now let's first do the icons and everything, right?
I think that's it. I think that's the best first place. Like you just built a button, really simple. You created an auto layout. In case you guys don't know, auto layouts got a couple of updates. If you haven't seen them, we can talk a little bit through them. While we're building these, the fact is, by default auto layouts, if you have a text box, they pick your increment values and use that as the default. So not new system default for Figma for the last update is 8 pixels. Thank God, because before it was 10, and basically everyone worked on 4 and 8 pixel systems nowadays. But if for some reason you want to change that, you can actually just come here to preferences, and there's this little thing that says nudge amount, where you can shift how much is your smaller nudge and your bigger nudge. I'm actually going to eventually change this to 4 because I'm getting to the nitty-gritty of details. But the fact is, you can also change that to match whatever baseline unit your system has. For example, and this is something that I have to do, I also work with print on Figma. Figure out why, because I use it for everything nowadays. And for example, for bigger print stuff, we actually also use Figma as a baseline and use those type of tools, right? We go and say, okay, our baseline number is an 8 because actually our smallest font is going to be like, I don't know, 16 pixels or 32 pixels because it's like for big prints or whatever. So I sometimes change the nudge amount so that I'm actually using bigger measurement units, and actually it's very helpful. So again, you can do that. Once you start building your buttons, you have the very basic things. We can define the type of alignment that we want, and if we want the button to be fixed or not in terms of width. But there's a couple of cool things that you can actually do. Flavio, let me just check one thing. I had brought the icons here, and now I don't see them. What happened? There we go.
Just build a placeholder. So
yeah. We can use that exactly for what we're going to be doing now when we're building buttons. So first things first, we use the auto layout. Really simple. We set the direction of the button. The alignment is over here on the left. And there's a couple of other cool components and things that you can do. You can also edit now paddings one by one, in case you didn't know. So you actually, but in a more visible way. So you actually have this here. Or if you want to change it more visually, even the same way as you have those grid controls, now they work directly on top of your buttons. You can use regular drag on left and right to use these. And if you use shift while you're dragging, you get those increments. If you use alt drag, you get the increments on both sides, but now you lose the shift, because if you use shift, basically it's going to do 4 sides at the same side. And the same for spacing between objects. Here is your spacing. You can control it. And if for some reason you just want to make it automatic, just write auto, and it goes from back to space between, and it works really well. You can write it here if you double click, and you can change the value. Same for any one of these layers. If you click on them, you get basically editing boxes here, or you can change it on the right side, right? So right now we have the button design more or less set up here, but you just did something wrong.
no, that's a little bit.
And here's the thing. So when we're building this type of stuff, when we're building this type of buttons, the fact is that now you can use component properties to speed up some of these changes. And the way that Flavio just had the placeholder for icons is going to make us, for example, not waste that much time with the icon replacement by using a really simple technique. So I'll start by making a component out of just this button. And most likely what you would have to do in the past is you had to select all of these 3 buttons to actually create your variants, right? Right now, you actually don't need to create a variant design. You can actually just have component properties attached to one component. How does that work? Right now, you have on the side properties. You can start adding those directly here. A variant might not even be needed. In this case, it isn't. Let's say that this is all that your buttons are. It's just an icon on the right or not, plus a button label. So you can actually have a Boolean, and let's say that this Boolean is an icon. And then you can also have an instance swap, which is icon swapper or something. and then the instance actually is going to just be the icon placeholder for now. And you can also have a text property that it's going to be label, and the default will be Laval. Ooh. No, that was bad. It's French. It's French. Button label, and I create the property, and it's running. So what happens now? We need to attach these to the button, to the button components, right? So you created 3 properties that you can use. First one being the true and false, and you basically can come here, apply Boolean property icon. So now you have a true and false without having to design the icon or take it out. It's just there, it works, and you have one button. You don't need to design all the variations of it. Second thing, same thing. You have an icon placeholder. You have here apply instance swap property. You can put the icon swapper. So now you can already change your icons. So the little symbol that shows up here, apply instance swap property. You can create a new one. You can, if you did like me, you create it in the beginning, you just attach it to there. And then last but not least, with the text, same thing. Content shows here, which is a new field. Before I didn't have these. So you actually can just put here label, and it's just gonna inherit the content from our label. Right now the button actually has something wrong, which is the auto spacing, which is 1 by 8 pixels here. And literally, instead of having to design all of those 3 or 4 variants that we had before to set up this, basically now we have one button that has all of those things working. Icon on and off, and actually this is not working, so I'm just put it on hung right now. So icon on and off, and you can actually replace the icon placeholder with whatever icon you want from that list. And if you want to edit the text, you can edit it on the text label, like Hello World, which is a classic, but you can also edit it here, and it's going to update on the label. So same thing again. If I come here and say CTA, or this is a box, because that's what it is, you get the same thing, right? It's there on the right side. And before you had to create multiple variants for this, now that's not a necessity anymore. It becomes a necessity when there's actually changes in styles. Okay, so if you have a single button, it's fine. You have one component. The moment you start getting into style complexity, that's when you start having to build those. So what happens is the properties in theories are not variants. They are basically what you would before do with nested variants. Okay, and it saves a lot of time. So building a button can be really fun. Now that that button is built, and I'm just going to delete all of those old way buttons or old-fashioned way buttons.
Try to change the color. It works.
I can change the color. It works.
It works.
Ooh,
I just tested.
so we actually don't have to the whole hack for the icons. Okay, so the workshop just got way smaller right now because apparently there's a new trick that I don't know. No, it's still breaking. It's still breaking. It depends on the amount of layers.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
Sorry about that. But as you can see, basically you can change them here, and this is one of the things that we're going to talk about later. So yeah. What happens is now the only thing that you actually need to do is, okay, I have my base component. I need to add a variant because I need another style. So you can actually just create add variants. And now the variant is likely just going to be styles, basically font weights, colors, and not much more than that. Those properties that before had to be designed one by one now can just be assigned here really fast. And you lose very little time to set up something like this. So yeah, I think we're going to just build a couple of buttons according to our system really fast. I'm going to delete this copy here. Why don't you go ahead and try to build that primary and secondary button based on the colors? And I'm just going to do the updates on the styles as I have here. So let me just do a couple of updates. So secondary button outline, that would be the semantic, secondary, and outline. Here we go. Just gonna change this real fast to our brand secondary, the same way that we have this one here. We want this one to be, let's say, this, and probably needs to be the 700 because it needs more contrast. And the same thing on the button text. So let's use those comments and update our systems real fast. Okay, while I'm doing this, and I can close up the comment that I left for myself, Flavio can still be working on his own components. I'm going to just start building the properties here on the side so that he just needs to worry about those. So here on the top, we can have basically button type. right? And then I can start labeling them. This one actually should be using those semantic colors that are on here, which are an outline, a little bit more. And then let's put it like this. Which one is the outline? I'm just sorry about that. I need to see these. This one is for the text. It's not going to be very visible right now, but don't worry, we'll eventually get there. So this one will be the secondary. This one will be the primary. And I don't know what Flavio is doing, but he's doing something really
Strange, the hack is not working.
No, we can do it afterwards on the main icons and not worry about this right now. Probably we can delete this one and just make these two because we're going to be somewhat short on time on these, but yeah. And again, the way that we're building the system using the colors here saves a lot of time, right? Like you have all the brand colors, but having those semantic types here saves a lot of time on how you build those things. And it's very, very simple tokenization still. It's like level 2, but the fact is now anytime we need to change our brand, we know that these things kind of go along. So if we need to change brand primary and then brand background, it kind of just works and it's easy. And again, what before would happen with a bunch of different buttons now literally works with just a couple of them, right? So right now, really simple options where you can actually just replace this with any icon that you just want there. See what you're gonna do. See what you did. Come on. And basically you just need to choose like between primary and secondary and edit the information, or if it's without or with an icon. And you basically just build a really simple thing. And again, you can also just keep scaling this up really fast by having new options and properties like this. Like your button now has icons on the left and the right. So literally you just need to go and check your buttons here. Right now it has the properties that it has attached on the other side. So you need to break them and you can create new right from where you're working, right? So I can just come here, apply Boolean, create, and call it icon left. And by default it's always on. And the same thing here, create a new one called icon swapper left. And it just kind of works, right? Again, this doesn't work with core components, because if you would try to make this, and let's say that I, for example, have a core component here and I want to use this here, just kind of rearrange it real fast so that you can all see. Thanks, Flavio. Is that now if you want to do try to apply those, usually there are limitations to how you can apply these type of things. But apparently, actually, yeah, what I need is these, and yeah, now it shouldn't work, but apparently it is. Something was fixed in the coming days. Most likely Figma went down because of this update. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so in theory, you can just attach those things. Again, if you want to have the logic of a core component, apparently it started working again. I tried earlier today and it wasn't working, but basically you can have a core component with the properties already defined on the core component, or even not defined, but it kind of just changes the whole perspective, because now you're working with something that has a bunch of different information. But again, it still needs to be set up here. So you can only kind of decide, okay, I want to have a bunch of icons, and you're still gonna have to do it all by hand somewhat. I think you can do, if I'm not mistaken, also the same thing on multiple at the same time. So you can actually attach the same thing to multiple, which is faster. And this is a very common practice when you're building variants. So don't go and build a thing and give it a name. Build everything and then kind of like select all of the same components and attach the same properties, attach the same labels. You're going to waste way less time, and it kind of just works. And again, as you see, that one has a core component. We can attach whatever we want here. In this case, it's content. So label, it's getting there. Same thing here. We're selecting all of these icons, and we can select an icon swapper and an icon, and it's working. And I think I actually didn't add the icon on this one, right? Let's see. Yeah, this one doesn't have the view option here. This is the icon left. Yeah, and our button immediately gets all of that, right? So we get button label, we get the icon swappers left and right. and it's working, and literally 3 buttons create this plethora of whatever you need. And it's probably the best way to explain how you can build some of these. Out a little bit outside of button, but still on auto layout. I don't know if you all know or not, but now you actually have absolute positioning objects, which is like game changer and a lot of things. And those are also play with. And I'm just gonna do a quick test where we're gonna have one of those. But I don't know, probably let's put one of those very not so good labels like new that everyone loves to put like on apps and stuff. Good UX, great UX. Let's put it with the red there, just so it kind of shows. And it's an announcement thing. Let's put it like that. Announcement. My layers, I have the worst names. Oh, put the star in there, please. Put that in there. We can have that as a background, which is kind of amazing, right? Let me just have this one first, and then I'll replace it with yours. Okay, it's as easy as create an absolute positioning here on the top right. You can actually have these things wherever you want. On this case, I want it to be aligned to the right and to the center, so it kind of scales. So you actually can use constraints, as in hold frames, not auto layouts, to actually make it work with the rest of your UI. So if you put it there, and in this case, I'm actually just gonna paste it also on, wait, what happened? Just gonna paste it also on the other 2. It comes with the properties of absolute positioning, so you actually don't have to worry too much about it. And yeah, it in theory should be working. So let us just do a quick reset to this component. Here we go. Make sure that this is correct, and the components are also adjusting correctly. Give me a second here. These are all on set up. Yeah, it should be fine. So yeah, and now it should go. No, there's something wrong with this component, or what else? What else is new? What's happening? Oh, it's still left top. I just used the wrong thing. Sorry about that. It's right top. That's what we need to do. So these need to be set up here, right? And like top or center or bottom. So center in this case, and then all of the buttons actually should be like this. That's what I wanted. And now it should work. Okay, so we can just edit the button label if it allows me. It's there. And once again, if you have your properties, and even if that's always there, it's not going to affect it. It just works and it adjusts to the space. And you lose so little time because of the way that this auto layout works in these components. I don't think we actually need a new like that, but I prefer yours. So let's replace it real fast.
One quick thing. The way I built it, we use it like a custom shape with a position of absolute on the label, so I can have the background scalable, and the text is all on the center. You can inspect to show.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Let's see how this one works. So, or better yet, let's first take it further. I write. What do you want to write? I just want to see you write something there. Yeah.
You want?
Old, but that's still 3 words. That doesn't work.
It's not on center. Okay.
Okay. So then, working a little bit better. Is that the expected behavior, Flavio?
I think you can do it like this.
Okay, there you go. There's actually a few cool things that we can then send videos for everyone. Migi, which is the designer advocate at Figma for Education, actually did a couple of cool things on how to use these. And for example, use the union feature to kind of like stretch out and make these really weird combo elements. It's a really cool thing to check out, and we can share those afterwards. But yeah, like any of these works. And again, some of the new features, even the basic ones like the full replace, in case you don't know, if you do paste to replace, or well, in this case now it's Control-Shift-R, but I think it still works with the old one, which is Control-Alt-Shift-V. Kind of replace the whole thing, and you can make your absolute positioning again, put it on the right, and like there you go. Yeah, so all our buttons are more or less working right now. We're just having fun with this component, but the fact is the thing that we wanted to do next, and we started working, and you see that it isn't working as expected, was the icon selection. So let's say that we want to put an icon here, and we want to put that icon there. Like the way that they are built also affects. So this is what we're going to be talking about, like how to build a proper icon library. Okay, so Flavio, maybe while I clean up the icons, don't you want to put the buttons in its place? Like it's there.
Right. I can organize the buttons.
Okay, I'll just keep a copy of the main button so that we can play around with it afterwards. So when we're talking about icons are one of those that actually I would suggest against building any weird new component like variant stuff with them. Icons need to be searchable, need to be visible, need to be easy to find. So it's also easy for you to just create a really simple icon / something library, or put all your icons into a frame that's called icons, so that it kind of goes into that library structure again. And it should be the way that you do it. So what I'm going to do is really simple again. Actually, I'm going to just take out the naming so that it's better for me to do this. Yeah, in case you don't know, you can actually put the match name on top, and it takes out if you don't put anything under replacement. Put it on a frame called icons. Hey, my shortcuts are fraying off. And there you go. We definitely have our icons here. So I'm just going to drop it there. Our library is there. And let's take these two out of here, because these are just us. Okay, so our icon library right now is here. We can actually have its own field container just so that it's occupying the full space. Second here we go. But as you've seen, our icons aren't actually working that well. So why is that? There are some things when it comes to creating icons that you need to build in a certain way for them to work. Color properties don't replace unless they all are built with the same number of layers inside or the same elements. Therefore, you actually need to forge the fact that they are like one icon or multiple, stuff like that. So what can we do here to improve our icon library? First is do that proper setup of how all of these icons could work as one. Simplest way to do it, if they have multiple components, they're already kind of ready for us to do it, which is, let's see, let's try another, this one here. You just click on union and voila, that's how you do it. You call it an icon on the layer, and that way when you're changing colors on your icon, you're changing colors on the icon union layer. If all of them are just one layer called the icon, it changes, it doesn't break, and it's a great way to maintain those icons working. Also, bonus points, when you export, they already come outlined. Therefore, you actually don't have to worry if they are a line SVG, and if you scale them up or anything, the line stays the same. No, they are outlined. Therefore, what you get out, and if you scale them up or down, they keep the outline on scale, and which is a really good practice. So I think we can probably do this for most of them. We just do this, same thing, enter, and just the unions really fast. And yeah, it's a very manual process. Probably if you have a license to the plugin Automator, you can do this really fast. I don't have. I'll make sure that I'll call Jordan one of these days and try to get him to give me a license, or at least how's the cost, because I haven't been checking out. So it takes a while, but if you do this as a process, it's just a couple of key presses. You start getting it up, you start getting it running, and probably this will also be fast, as you can see in the video, unless you hit something like this. What is this? This is a single vector object. Therefore comes the trick. What you need to do, and this is what was Flavio trying to do, and probably you can try and do it now also. Okay, I'm just gonna follow you so that everyone can see to the Zoom that you're actually doing it.
So you have to create a shape, a regular shape, and you put it here, right?
So if you look at the layer panel, it's actually on top of the vector there, just to make sure that you can actually.
Yeah, select both. You go on top and select union selected is like the two squares.
Sorry.
All right, now we have a union. We're going to call it icon, and the trick is you can now just delete the rectangle, and you have a union icon.
So basically Boolean operations work independent of what you have in them, if it's one or multiple objects. So when you need to mimic the same behavior, but your icon is already built in a different way, you just need to put an object in, take it out, and it still works as a Boolean operation. So now it still has exactly the same structure everyone else. And now I'm just gonna keep doing the same on the others until I find another one like that. And Fabio, you could probably take care of a couple of others so we don't lose as much time. There's also the possibility that this happened, where some icons just go like, oh, you want to do this? Fuck you. And I'm going to try and use a trick there. Sometimes it solves the problem. It works, but let's see. Okay.
Which one don't have it?
Let's just do this thing. I'm going to turn this into a single object. Union, and no. There's something wrong with the way the base component is built, and I know what it is. This little thing here, this like 1 millimeter thing, is most likely breaking our effect. Let's just do that. Cool. And then instead of doing a union, most likely we can.
I think all of them already have.
There's the only one that I broke, and then I think you can try and do intersect or stuff like that. If it doesn't work, then probably this is one of these one of those cases where you need to just play around until it works. Sometimes it's just because of the stuff like I think for a second there you could see stuff like this, which have to do with the way that the curves on the icons render. It's one of the known bugs on Figma. They have been trying to take care of it. I'm just gonna ungroup again, and it's stuff like this, like double icons here on the corners. If you simplify it a bit, let's just remove a few steps. Should solve the issue. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, but we're not gonna have a pretty icon for a gamepad. Again, same thing. Put a rectangle. Do a union. Yeah, no, it's not going to be able, or it kind of is
like a cubic.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to delete this one because it doesn't actually work. So we'll do a new one later if needed.
Yeah, probably was made on Sketch.
It's a possibility, but actually for a couple of these things like Sketch and Illustrator stuff, because you don't know, Rogi, one of the designer advocates from Figma, just started developing a couple of cool plugins. 2 of them actually import Procreate in layers, and one, the latest that it launched, AI, PDF, EPS, and SVGs can be imported into Figma through this plugin. Break on some levels. He's still testing on 10 megabyte levels for PDFs. So heavier AI files and stuff like that might not work, but it's a good thing if you guys need to work with that type of stuff. So now that they're supposedly all built like that, you lied to me. The ones below are not like that. Come on, Fabio. Keep up. The ones after the one that I was working on. You can basically just do an enter. Since they're all unions, you can actually just rename them all at once. Icon is not correct, it's icon. So now they're already all working within that feature of if we need to put an icon, if we change the color, it should work. Another thing that we most likely should do right now is actually replace the baseline instance that we have here with, instead of a placeholder, being one of those. So let me just click here on the instance swap. We can change the icon placeholder directly with any one of these icons that we have here, just for the correct. So let's put the bots here, and the same thing here. Can be also the bots, just a placeholder. And then Flavio, what did you do?
Where they have a
Let's just reset all changes and it should be working. And we can actually now just do the overrides. Do on the top, we'll do it on the middle one. Here we go. Color changes, there you go. And again, color changes, which should be, in this case, none of these is actually, I'm using the wrong ones. I forgot the names of the things that I had. So this is CTA button text, and then the ones that are here that are wrong, I can actually use selection colors to change into, this is incorrect. This is actually the button text. or texty apparently. And same for all of these. We have the tangerine. Well, we want the brand color, so we're going to use button background. Okay, and again, what we did should make it so that now when we play around with the button, and I'm just gonna do a quick reset on all the instances so that we have a clean slate. If you change the icon on the selector here, and again, old habits, I keep clicking on the bottom, my mistake there, but let's say like with the cloud and the moon, as you see, the icon was yellow because we had the override for black, it changes, and the same thing will happen if you move it to a secondary, it still keeps the blue. So that saves a lot of time there. It's gonna be most likely a lifesaver on some of those things. I actually don't know, and now it's gonna be a test also for me, if icons as variants work. So I'm just gonna do a quick test where we're gonna turn one of these into a variants icon.
Actually, Jeanette was saying it's really useful to use them. For example, Wi-Fi on and off. You can have a variant. You just search Wi-Fi, and you can select which one you want. For example, sound off now. When you're doing screens, it's useful sometimes.
Yes.
With one of that.
Yeah. So let's say that we want to use
cripple and not cripple. Yeah.
Don't.
Sorry.
Let's say that we want to use it for sizing and have, for example, a 16 pixel. The good thing about this, you actually didn't lose the line, so you can actually still control line work with this model and have like a 1.5 if you want to. And yeah, people now use 1.5 line icons. If you ask Google, they do it. So if they do it, I think the world is allowed to do it. And in a world where every screen has its own resolution and 2x, 1.5x, 1. What's an half pixel nowadays? You can actually have the properties here, so I'm just going to put a size property and have it to the button, and by default it's a 32. Wait, it's a 24 pixel and a 16 pixel, right? There we go. Let's see how that behaves when we come here. Let me put it out as a button primary again, so we can look at it like this, and as a icon swapper again, Cloud Moon. Let's go to our accessibility. And basically now you actually have the controls just inside. So the thing is, this is not a property that you can control out. It's a variant. It still demands that you go in and change inside that specific variant. Not bad when building things, but it does mean that you have the granular control. And again, if you need to change the icons, since it's using instance swapper, you can just click here, and instead of doing what I did, you can actually just search for something like this, and doing it in this technique, you get the preview. You can even have this option that has the name in the preview. It just saves a lot of time, and it's a great practice. And apparently, I actually still need to call them icons something because they are not using the box. So I'm just gonna do that real fast. But that's it. Like for icons, this is more or less common practice. You can use variants to a certain degree like this. Just don't do what I did, which is apparently I called it 26 because I didn't like the number one. But it gives you some granular control, but you don't really need to go and have too much time wasted on that. Okay.
Just one click.
Go.
Do you have the selection variants plugin?
I have the selection variants.
It's
You can
not
actually
working properly with the new variants, but they should update it soon. For the size of the icons, it's really.
I don't have the selection variants plugin. I need to get it. Give me a second here. We tested this out yesterday, and we didn't really install it, but I have it.
It's installed. Figma problems. Yeah.
Figma problems. Or did I wrote like wrong? There we go. Selection variants. Yeah, it's not gonna work with this, right? It's gonna work if you put it like this, right?
Just show the regular variants.
So selection variants is a plugin that Gleb, which is a very active community member, built with our guy, and does this for you. It tells you what are on the underneath layers. So in theory, does what people have been asking Figma to do for a while, which is if we have nested variants, can I control them? Selection variants does exactly that. You get a little UI for those variants. We can select the size of the icon here, and it changes some things. At this point, I think the size is fixed, so you can see that it just changes the size of the label. that might be a bug that we need to look into in the way that it works. But yeah, you can actually just use this as a component selector, and it's faster for when we have selection variants or nested variants. That's
really complex components. It's useful.
Okay, I think I can delete this one, right?
Yeah, sure.
There we go. And I'm just going to delete this button because it was a test button, and we'll eventually do a couple of other stuff. Probably you could start adding properties to the new while I start building the cards. No?
That's really good.
Can you add properties to the new so we can turn it on and off?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, starting to get heavy, responsive card components, but not just the basic things. While we're building this, it's just because it is an easy way for us to represent how these components will work. Again, we're doing a somewhat simple exercise, but it's already like 8:30 and we've been in this for a while now, and we just like 2 things. So you see that these things take time, but the fact is we can start building stuff, really cool stuff with a couple of couple baseline ideas and cool things. So what we're going to be doing right now is a component that is a card layout for a blog, where we're just going to create slot components for certain types of content. So we can actually replace those really fast and have the same layout for the card, but then you can change like the widget that is on top, for example, for each card, and you can create very simply some elements. So let's start by creating those baseline widgets. Right now, let's say that I want to have an image. I'm just going to run and splash real fast to put a random image here. Presets inside random. Here we go. Oh, cool. Happy people with a laptop. Feels like a workshop or a meetup. So I'm just going to turn this into a component, call it image. And then this is going to be really simple to use. And then let's do a different one. Instead of having the image component, I'm actually going to use another plugin that I really like to use every now and then, which is Mapsicle. And if you don't know Mapsicle, you don't have to take screenshots of maps. Stop doing Google Maps screenshots. Open Mapsicle, decide what you want, generate an image. It's that simple. And it's really good to create this type of interaction. So I'm just going to go and do like a 2000 by 2000 pixels thing, like gigantic map. There you go, San Francisco. It's like, did I cover like the whole thing? Yeah. And you can put it inside the component there if you select it correctly. Oh, it doesn't have clipping. That's my bad. And let's say that we have this like here, and the only thing that you need to do is on prototype have horizontal and vertical scrolling, and now you have a scrollable map component ready to be implemented. So we're going to have these two that we're going to use intermittently. We're actually going to create an animated cards component after this that we're going to also have to this slot. So these are our baseline components, but now we actually want to build a slot component. And the slot component literally is just a placeholder for content, but now it's easier to replace with instances, the instance properties. So we're basically just needing more, almost like a button. You just write something like slot component and put it in auto layout, make sure that it's properly built, call it slot if you want to. I usually make them so that they look like something that is replaceable by default. So like soft colors or something that doesn't have that much readability on purpose, because that way you know that these are not usable, and dashed lines also help to create this like idea of like something that is just occupying space. If you want to make it look a little bit better, you put it on on fill container and on fill container again, and that way we have the content centered and on fill container, independent of the space that we want the slot to occupy. It will look somewhat good and give you a representation of the space. So slot, really simple, kind of like a button. It just works. That's all we need. Now we need to build our card component, and we're going to start like this. We have a slot component. We have a text layer that we're going to call it our title. And let's use one of the styles that we have here, maybe an H3. There we go. Let's use a quick paragraph here. Same thing, but probably if we want to represent text, yeah, I'm going to be doing sacrilege stuff and using lorem ipsum. I know we shouldn't use lorem ipsum, but sometimes it's easy. And we have the baseline idea, and then probably just insert a button. If you guys don't know how to reach the components tab like this, Shift-I, and it just opens, and you can actually just come here and look for your components. Buttons are here, so I can just drop a button real fast. And well, I actually want it to be the primary. Yeah, you didn't have the properties, right?
No, it's not working. I don't know why.
It's, you need the,
Create it, but I can select it.
give me a second here. Let's try and just figure this out. 1, 2, 3. It's here. It's new, and it's just
you.
yeah.
Right, so
It's
okay.
on the opacity layer that sometimes we don't see.
It is okay.
So we have it built in a very simple way. We know that it's always going to be a button, or at least we're expecting there always be a button. We have a title and text. Honestly, depends on how you want to build it. Usually what I do is like I attach the content block, because that way you have control of the spacing between the content and the padding below that point. Then you can actually just do this and select the entire thing and make a new auto layout, which will be our card. Since this component is actually, the slot will adjust to the contents, you can just make it fixed. Instead of fixed, you can make it fill, so that the top is always occupying as much space as you want, while this thing is fixed in height based on the content. Your boxes, again, same thing, all to fill horizontally, so our frame is starting, our card is starting to get ready. Using our own styles, let's use this as a background. Let's replace this with a readable color, add a little bit of padding on both sides, and even before becoming a component, you already have a very responsive, simple card component. The good thing about this now, you just call it a card, make it a component real fast, and you start to build it with those properties. Again, slot needs an instance, so it's going to be, let's say, well, widget. And it comes by default with a slot that you can then change real fast. And then if you want to put labels here, you can, not mandatory, but then already comes with its own, so you don't really need to care about it. The fact is now you can just duplicate, and where you have a slot, you can just put an image, or you can just put a map, and it will always work. And since it's using those components, even for the map, for example, it's just going to use all the space that you have, so you can actually build this thing to work really well. In this case, I actually should have changed the map to be center. That way it's always aligned with the center of the component, which is cool. And if we put this into a prototype, which I'm going to do real fast, let's just put here desktop. Can be the MacBook Pro, although I'll never have one. And let's put, I don't know, somewhat darker background, so you can put some of these here. And wait a minute. And let's replace this with an image and make it shorter, just so we can showcase this thing. And play. Give it a second to load. And there you go. You now have a component with a scrollable map inside. You have a component with an image, and we'll eventually have a third component. I think someone knocked at the door, so might be some people that came late. And we're actually going to try and create the third component with a more interactive element that we're going to use interactive components to do it. I was almost saying interactive animations, but there is it. Those are the people that lost their flight was delayed. That's which is fine. So yeah, the fact is slot components are now more available than ever before. You had some issues with the way that they worked. Even if you used auto layout, you most likely would end up with results that sometimes weren't exactly where you expected. Like if there was a set default value, your component might have like break in space, or a text box will look weird. Now, most likely you won't have that issue. Just using slot components to build this type of stuff makes it so that you actually don't have to go through a lot of hard work to build more dynamic things, and you can embed these interactive components inside and make things a little bit cooler. Then again, more on the cards. You can also do the same thing as we did on the buttons. So let's say that we want to have again another thing like a new. You can actually have something like this real fast on the top right corner, which works really well for this type of content. Doesn't mean that you should use it, but never mind. Like if you work on e-commerce, most likely your boss is going to say, why don't we do this? This is why, but no worries there. The new tag is working. And you can also actually go back. So I'm just gonna, just gonna attach this to the layer. So the toggle is only used usually on layers, so on and off, therefore its visibility. But you can actually then also backtrace to the fact that we need more than just one label, right? So now that we have a component for the new, we can just add a variant and say deal, for example, and have this running real fast. And this makes it so that, and I'm going to use the positive thing. This makes it so that when you're actually building these things, not only can you turn the new on and off, or the whatever you want to call it, you can also just come here and change it to deal. And it's really fast. So you don't really need to waste that much time on when building this type of stuff. You can also add some controls of this type of things, but it's easy enough for you to do some more interesting cards. And again, with a really simple layout, you get a few complex options, right? You have two widget objects, you have one slot component, you have one card, and you have one label, right? So shouldn't be a big deal. It's easy to have it, and anyone can just start building this type of stuff. So as we said at the beginning, the idea is to build some sort of like blog layout type of thing. So our next step actually is, if this works, a set of pre-designed layouts, which is something that we don't use much. Many times what happens, we tend to actually design the full layout, but actually now you can just build really cool things and simple stuff like grid components that will act much like CSS grid, which is really cool. Or very simple column components where you kind of define the width based on the definition that you built your own things. So this can work in several levels. We're gonna just, again, reuse our slot component and, for example, do a really simple tree grid system here. And let's say that it is based on an auto layout, so we're expecting it to compress and extend, so we don't really care much if it always has the same size. So we make it so that it is 3 components set to fill container, and that way what you're going to have is a layout that is a 3-column layout independently of how you work with it. So it's just going to adapt, and you can actually put your content here and it never breaks. So let's make it a simple 3-column layout, or layout 3 columns on the naming. Same thing for if you want to just add a couple others. If you want to speed this up, if you want to do, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 6, you can just make the spacing here auto. Okay. And you can just come here and something like this. Or better yet, actually, you don't need this space auto, sorry, because it's set as a field container. It's just going to work. So you can actually just come here and then delete one component here, and here you can actually just duplicate. And all of these layouts immediately are somewhat ready to work, right? Feature with icon, like it. Yeah, I'm going to use it right after. So yeah, you can create them as single things. You can just create a component set and immediately get a variant for this, where you can have that property, which is type, and then, well, these are badly set up, but I'm just going to fix that real fast. So 2, 3, and 4 columns. And now we can actually just delete this, bring, for example, one of these here, adjust it to, even if we need to apply, for example, layout grids, and we know how much we want, I'm just going to use a default like 12-column grid with some random values attributed to it. So something like this with 6 and then got the 16. and this is just gonna go like this. You will adapt it. It should work real fast. And now you have the slot components ready to change. But, and here is where component properties need to be set up. All of these actually need component properties. So you need as many properties for instance swappers as you need for the number of cons. Or you can actually do it all in one. Why? You can actually use toggles to turn on and off. Therefore, what I just did is old way. Nowadays, I would actually just do this. You have maximum 4, you click and you put on a layout, and you go to properties and you create, well, basically each one of them has a toggle on and off since the 2, 3, 4. So these two will have a toggle here. So let's just go into properties, and we have a Boolean. This is 3, and then we can have another Boolean that is 4. And we're going to attach those, and then we can have is the swaps for all of them. So slot 1, then the instance being always that, where is it? Slot component, there we go. We're being very messy while building this, but that's the best way to do it again. By the way, let me do a type check. Yeah, we're still on time. And again, you need to build all of these for all of them. So slot 2, slot 3, slot 4, oh, sorry, use the different type of property. Instance swap.
Bruno, can you slow down a bit?
Yeah.
People ask.
What happened?
You're going too fast, people can follow.
Oh, sorry, Tom. I'm just trying to build instance properties, instance swapping properties for each one of these layouts so that we can actually have one layout component that has all of them. Again, properties do the job that before we would do when designing all of these. So again, just using slot, and you can basically duplicate these. I think you can actually duplicate these here on the side or not. No, I thought you could. It needs to be a little bit more manual, but it just works from the moment you set it up. So slot 3 and slot 4. Let's just do this. And last but not least, wait, something happened. Something happened, and I don't know what it was, but something happened. As far as I was using a copy and not the actual thing, so let's just fix that. But something happened with my instance swap for some reason. There we go. Slot 3, and it's again a slot in slot 4. An instance and slot. Take some time. When it starts getting to work, it's going to be cool. So here, slot 1, here, slot 2, here, slot 3, plus the toggle for slot 3, and here again slot 4 plus the toggle for slot 4. So yeah, now we should have. I'm just going to replace this, set it up like that, and you can actually go for 3 columns, 2 columns, and you can select which goes into each one of them. It still works with the 3 and 4. You can make it progressive. You can actually reorder the components. So when building these things, you can actually drag these so it's more visual. So 3, 4, that makes it so that you actually have the controls on the right positions. And yeah, now it's as easy as replacing each one of these slots with a card. And again, you get what happens when sometimes you build it like that. You can just do reset all changes. Not on the slot, it's on the card. Does it work? See, sometimes it breaks. I need to do one thing though. Sorry about that. It's fill and fixed, and these are supposed to be fixed and hug. And that's the biggest issue. There you go. That was my wrongdoing there. Okay. And this is actually on the right side. So that was corrected. Now we're working with it. Again, new card. And if you turn on 3 or 4, you can put more cards in and it's not gonna break. Cards are adjusting to the width really fast. And again, now you have card components that you can swap with, either images or maps. And this is somewhat easy to assemble with those layouts. So 2 with maps, 2 with images, just for example here. And you created a new one, right?
Yeah, I have the elements. Okay.
Element feature with icon. And then you have the image there that we're going to work right afterwards. But as you can see, layouts can become somewhat easy. You can turn them off and just adjust to the width that you defined based on the way that you build it. And you can actually just scale this real fast. And it's still based on layouts. Even if you need to work with less space, you can just use these. They're working. You can also use other properties that we don't talk about on our layouts to make it work a little bit better. In this case, since it still goes from top to bottom on who's on top, you can see that the new tag is always staying under the other cards. And I'm just going to do a zoom for the people in the room because I know that it's very low res, but you can see there. So on the auto layout properties, you can actually replace this and now put first on top, and that way it goes and it does the correct thing, which is like the one on the left is always on top of the one on the right. So it becomes simpler, that the changes repercute really fast through all these components, right? You don't lose as much time trying to do these details and trying to make sure that these things work. It just becomes better and better when you need to scale them up. So those were slot components. Now we're going to start animating components and try to bring those also into there. We already have somewhat of an animation with the scrollable map, which is a simple thing, but it's one that you can do for a bunch of stuff. Also, if you want, you can actually just create a giant image of a map. If that map has interactions in it, put the images on the component of that map and then put that map into a container for the card. That way, you can actually navigate on the map, click on things on the map, and have opening interactions on the outside of the map if you have those. For example, if you're designing something like an Airbnb type of place, you can actually have little icons connected with the detailed card page and open on a different page or on an overlay, whatever you want to do. So there's a lot of like in layer that you can do with that type of stuff. On the animation side, I actually wanted to make a little swipe card animation, but I think Flavio already started setting this up a little bit here. So yeah, that would be it. But I'm gonna do something a little bit different than what you did, which is instead of just having the cat and the dog here, I'm actually gonna have these as images outside. Because that way, what we're going to be doing is, sorry about that, multiple images, and you can probably put there a mouse or a cat, what you want to do. Okay. Yeah. What we're going to actually be doing is we're going to just pick these, and it's going to eventually have another one, and we can create swipe card effects, and I'm going to do a very Tinder swipe effect really fast, which takes some time, but it works if properly done. So just kind of, so these are the ones that are going to be updated, right? And whenever you can, then change the names to the pets, so I can use the copies of them. Okay, I'm just going to copy these, and I'm going to be building them on the side while Flavio works on that. So by creating these as baseline components, the first thing that you get is control. You can actually replace the images for each of the gallery directly there if you need to have that original layout. Plus, if they have their own names, it actually becomes way easier for you to animate them because they now have those names, right? Okay, let's do this. Wait, time check. Okay. So this is not very difficult when you need to build this type of stuff. You can just really fast set it up like this. Scale those cards up and down, align them really fast with the way that you want. But now comes the hard part. So this is the first of your layouts. You need to actually build a somewhat complex component to have that interaction to work. So I'm going to create a swipe, and then I'm going to duplicate this and make a second one. And here comes the difficulty. Oh, you're having more. Cool. Let's just rename these really fast so I know which layers I'm actually working with before I go on. But yeah, you can actually just make something somewhat simple. Usually I will basically kind of scale up the whole thing just real fast. Pull the other ones above and maybe do like this to the side, making sure that it is in there. But the fact is, what you're doing here on the component, it's probably going to take me a little bit more time than this, and I'm doing it little bit bad is you can actually make this a variant component and attach to the object that you're actually moving a swipe action or drag action, and it's going to basically do the animation for you. So on drag, change to, do a smart animate, and what happens is now, since we actually have this swipe as a replaceable component, in theory, we should be able to, on the card properties, replace it with a swipe, which is badly built, but first, just for testing results, let's do this real fast. And let's see how it goes. If it breaks, it's my fault. I'm overly confident at this point. Let's see. It's not working. It should work, so let's just do a double check here. It might be because the element is not there. Let me just do a double check again. Okay. The interaction on the card, prototype, drag. Oh, it might have to be, and then that's also something that happens every now and then with the name of the file or a couple of other things. But we'll try to fix that real fast. Sorry about the layer jumping. This is where it gets crazy, and I'm trying to do some complex stuff, and I know that might not be good. Let's give them property names real fast. So there's the swipe, and we can call this one and this one. And we can actually have a new variant, which is you can keep using booleans for variants if you need to, just to make sure that you are using some degree of control. And this guy's is like left, right, and if you guys never did this, it's easy and it works, which is you literally have a toggle for left or right. Therefore, if I want to build this with the right option, I'm just going to do it like this because I'm lazy. You can actually just come here and say, okay, it's on the right till on. Therefore, when you're actually building these, you can use like left, right, left, right. And the interaction is exactly the same. You come here to the same level that has the drag interaction, you connect it to this one. On drag, smart animate, it should calculate. Now, if it's not working, honest to God, I don't know why. I actually did this week for a test. I don't know what was happening there, but it actually I think it actually worked while we were not using it. Let's restart. Let's not restart. It might be that it's way too heavy for whatever we're trying to do here, or that some elements are blocking the axis. I don't know what's going on. It should work, and for some reason it isn't.
If it's alone and it works the swipe, but just drag the components.
There's something wrong with it. Technical difficulties, please give me a second. I'm going to show you a working example real fast that I built a few weeks ago for another Figmate in dire need to try and not lose his job, apparently. So this one is built in a not so correct manner. It's somewhat complex, but it actually works. The card swipe example that I built here, I built it like this, but for some reason, originally it wasn't working with the in-card animation, so I built it with screens. It still does the same thing, it works, but you can actually build it inside a card. I'm sorry for the delays here because I actually wasn't expecting this to not work. But yeah, you can see this here, it just kind of works. And the action that I'm doing still happens inside the component. It just happened that I had to build the interaction outside. Now, the fact is, since these are actually properly correctly built, I'm just going to copy these into our design system real fast so we don't waste that much time. Just drop it here. And well, in theory, these are much more complex, but we're going to try and do that anyways. So again, prototyping, just do a quick test on the dragging options here between these two. Make them both on drag, make them both smart animate, and then let's replace this one just for the test. So instead of being the swipe, we want the card swipe. Here we go. And again, it works. So basically, you can actually create this. I forgot that this actually is not set up. You basically can create this type of interactions directly on the component and use them in each and every one of them. So I would love to say that this is going to look good. I'm sorry, it's not. I kind of screwed it up here a little bit, but we can just do a quick replacement on this card from the swipe to the card swipe. Basically, it's going to be a card inside a card. It looks weird. Card inception, and we can actually try and just put these on fill container. So now I can actually just do this and this so that they kind of work a little bit better. They're not going to work better than this. Sorry about that. And for some reason, yeah, this is not going to do what we want. Sorry, but it's just. It's better than not having it all. But yeah, so again, same card component, map interaction, regular image, and the swipes, which might not be working again because of spacing issues, but they should be working if properly built, as demonstrated here, where it works. It works. And that is a very simple, basic setup for most of this. Second one you can also build, and this one is an example that was brought by our friend Xander from the SUPAFAST videos, is actually some really simple interaction buttons with the new types of animations. In case you don't know, Figma just launched a few types of animations that are based on spring type animations. So those are actually quite fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the dribble basketball thing and create a little button, which one of those interactions. So button, and then let's make it so that it has a white background. Well, it's yellow, so I'm going to make a dark background. And something like this, and we can actually just do an interaction where it kind of grows a little bit. Ooh, sorry, can't be an auto layout because of that. Or by the way, if you need to remove auto layouts simultaneously, Alt-Shift-A, it's the same thing as remove auto layout. So it does it for all of them. It's not a visual control. We can make it so it goes like that. And it is easy as, again, component set. You put a little animation here on click, bouncy. You can see the type of animation it's going to create. It's going to smart animate the object. The background is static, so it shouldn't do anything there. If we want this to go back after delays, just so that we have the same effect, we're going to basically be dribbling balls right now. And going back, I'm just going to book an is out real fast. We can just copy, apply those here. If we want to somewhere, just going to put it inside so we can test it out and put as many of them as we want here, just so that we have fun dribbling. And it should work here. It's like, it kind of does that little simple thing. If we make it faster, probably looks a little bit better. But the fact is, you can actually have this type of interactions or even change states. Example being, if you want to have a favorite button or something to your cards, these things are as easy, as simple as you can do, and you can actually create some very interesting type of animations. I actually have another example, but I don't think I can show it because it's somewhat broken, from my class. And they actually rebuilt the entire Instagram UI and had a reaction feature that might, like other networks, allows you to select more than just likes. And they managed to actually make it all inside one component that you can use in multiple pages and gets multiple outputs. So that one is actually really cool. Let's see if I can find that one, although I don't think I'm going to be able to find that one, because there's a lot of stuff happening here. That's Instagram reactions. I think this is the one. Give me a second. Oh no, that's just the FigJam file. This is the actual thing. And we're still applying for the last 30 minutes on plugins and stuff like that. And if I go and press play, and I'll then show you how this is built. I would love to be bringing everything into the file, but again, we had some issues today with the whole Figma thing, and yeah, it kind of delayed. But as you can see here, what they basically did was you can put your mouse over the button and hold, and then if you come up, you can actually select whatever you want there. I think this is not I think this is the correct one, exactly. So you can actually select, and all of these are one interaction component that they built. You click on them and it goes to a final interaction and it stays selected. And you can actually implement these on all of the posts. So you can actually have multiple outputs in all of the posts. And yeah, this was really cool to build, built by people that have never used Figma in their life. So it was actually really fun to see them figuring out how this worked. I love the poop interaction. But it is, again, a very interesting selection. You basically have the animation on the icon that goes up. You have the active animation happening the moment you put your mouse over a certain object, and then once you click it, there's an output state that gives you a baseline that is the same, that is still connected to that hover to put the reactions on top, so you can actually change them. And it kind of works programmatically in that sense. So it creates a very real sense. It's not perfect. There's some issues with the hovers, which is really hard to create on Figma, let's face it. But what you're seeing here in terms of connections and everything, if this was as it was before, basically we would just be seeing a giant mess of lines. Nowadays, it kind of works. So yeah, here you have it. If you want to change, if you just method it, in theory, you should be able to click on Map and it just changes. And yeah, it's buggy at a certain point. The first interaction is the one that always works best, but as you can see, it works, and you can start building this type of stuff on your systems, where the interactive components get more and more detailed, and you have more natural interactions that people can play around with on their devices. So I'm just going to close all of these examples that I have been gathering for the past few weeks. And actually go to the fact that we were talking about using everything all at once, and the fact is we kind of already did it playing around with this, but the fact that's how it works, right? So now you can change the buttons here and edit the content and not waste too much time, because if they are built in such a way that it's scalable. If we need to just go back and clean up, and in the fact that in this case the card swipes don't work, just reset all changes, and or even just come here and take the card swipe out and make another like image, and it works. That one was the only one that actually started working as we wanted, because we also affected the fact that the component was occupying the full space up the image. But no, it's like that. So this is working with a few components. We have a very interactive, very scalable system that you can play around with stuff like card designs. Now it's time to get to the power-ups. But before we go ahead, questions?
We have some questions on the
We have some questions in the chat. Okay. Julia, do you want to talk about the questions on the chat, or are you already asleep in Amsterdam?
It's getting a little bit late, but yeah, I can showcase the questions here. We have a question from Rita, and she's saying, do you know a way to show all variants in the assets panel? My team designers struggle to find variants if I have only one component that covers everything.
That's a system decision, as in based on what you need for your team, you decide what you want to have available or not in the variants, I would say. So, and I'm just now looking at the camera, and we're really, really dark. And the thing with those variants options is the moment you start complexing them, things start getting hidden in their layers of information, right? So most likely you need to do a good balance between actually what needs to be used and actually what needs to be selected or changed. Component properties kind of updated that a little bit, right? Like you have one component has everything, great. Not many people, there are a lot of people that won't be used to that. They are expecting something that's like is completely built and they just want to drag it. which is fine, but for system maintainers, that's not. So there's the balance that you need to make sure. So if you are the design system maintainers, if you are the people that are actually having to build the full design system, then probably you need to balance this with your team. Okay, by default, which are the ones that should be top level, which are the controls that you guys need. Because if you don't do that conversation, again, it's always a two-way conversation. You're just going to be wasting time on that. You're not going to get the best out of that alignment between those two teams, I would say. And then doing a practical walkthrough. Do you know how to work with wrapping elements, flex wrap?
What it does, flex wrap?
I know what flex wrap does. I think it doesn't work here.
Yeah.
Right there you go.
The question is like you have three columns. For example, you are resizing the component of the screen, and you have 4 columns, and you are resizing, and you have like 2 columns on top of each other, like vertical, like two. That's not easy to do. I don't know a way to do it. I don't know if that's some hack somewhere.
No, probably. I think the only option that we have right now on that is creation of each of the designs for the breakpoints, and eventually having, for example, the plugin for breakpoints to experiment with that. And if you guys never heard of breakpoints, the plugin, it's actually a really cool thing. It has the ability to create responsive designs on screen, basically. So let me just do this. It's breakpoint or breakpoints, exactly. So it literally allows you to design your design in multiple sizes and then attach those designs into this interactive thing that you can test out to see how it would work on a scaling and see what it will work with each dimension. It's a really cool plugin. I haven't used it very recently, just tested it out when it was launched, but it's actually super interesting when you're working, for example, with responsive websites. If you want to test how it works, you can do that, and you can play around with the concepts of flex, but you're always simulating. There isn't a Figma feature for flex at this point. Okay. There is, though, a new Figma feature for truncate. You guys know what text truncation is, right? Okay, so Figma now has that, so we can actually just come here, and here you have the option to truncate text. And if we go into let's see if that works. Yeah, I don't think it works because it's the way that it is built. But if it's basically a setup as a truncate text, if the text box there is not adjusting, which in this case, I don't know if it's working because of the way that it's built, it would basically do the truncation of the text, and it has the 3 dots at the bottom. So it basically has to do with the way that you build the components, but it can be done, and it's easier now. Although many people still defend it's not the best practice at all, right? Truncating text is just an option to hide content, and as much you hide content, the less you're using. It's a valuable option when people are trying to build like blog articles and they don't want, for example, to write an extra text just to have a small intro. They can reuse what they have, and if it's a little bit bigger, it truncates, it's fine. But it's not a commonly approved practice, especially on SEO practices and stuff like that. So when designing, is it for the accessibility of it? Is it for the inclusion of it? Is it for the SEO practices that lots of people say it kind of costs money and stuff? It is one of those that you can actually do. But yeah, flex still doesn't work, so that's not one that we would suggest here. So it's now 9:04 and we're heading into the last block, and all you just saw was 5 slides. And you knew that this was going to be like a big block, and that's why we left it for later. And here we're just going to be showcasing and playing around with some of the plugins that we think could be cool to start up and speed up your processes when designing, when building design systems or some components. So ready for some magic? Cool. Speeding up with all the plugins. First things first, and this is a very simple one, but it's a great one where you're starting to set up your design systems. Styler is a plugin that allows you to turn turn objects into styles really fast. And how you do it? Name layers. Therefore, text styles, for example, are really simple. You write whatever your text style is going to be, you apply the text style, you build the object, and you just run the plugin, generate styles with the correct naming, and you get this. So everything that you saw here, let's go here, was built like that. So all the styles that we have on the system, all these things that are very tidy up and organized there were built like that. So if you look at the way that we have this, text layers are the easiest because you basically just write what you want the naming to be. All of that is like that. If you want to update the style, you can also do that really easily. You just need to come here, break, edit whatever you want, and then styler, generate styles, and he is gonna identify that there was a style usually. Well, actually he created a new one, but yeah, it kind of just adjusts the style and usually allows you to do this type of stuff. So there's a bunch of different things you can do. This entire system was built like that. We kind of documented it on the side. There's another plugin that I like to use for documentation, but it didn't work attached to this. But again, you can see that the layer here is named brand primary 99. Therefore, it generates a color in the folder brand primary called 999. So Styler is a very simple yet powerful plugin to speed up things, easy to install, easy to run, great for your first tries. Even if it's not your first tries, let's say that you're trying out new styles, you can actually just add those styles really fast, and it's really, really cool. Plugin number 2. Do you want to talk about Figma Tokens because you were the one that actually brought this one into the conversation?
I can, of course. Figma Tokens are really trendy right now. I don't know if you know, but when you are doing the CSS less SAS, you have variables on the styles, and you can use like the tokens. What it does is like you are returning a phrase or word, not a phrase is too much, a word, and for a value, you change for the value. For example, I can do like $sign red, and I have my color, my X or my SL, HSL or anything, the color code, and you can always write red. It's much simple. You can do that as well on Figma. For example, you have the border radius, something that you don't have to style on the native app. You have for colors and for text only. Here you can create for other ones. It's really, really useful, and the developers really like it because you can also documentate it, and when they are inspecting, they can use the same. Ideally, you have the design system with the same names and everything, the same variables as the code. Makes everything much simpler.
Yeah. And as you can see here, there's a bunch of other options that you would have on Figma. And Figma, you basically have 4 styles: colors, text styles, effects, and I believe, yeah, and then you also have the grids that are considered styles, but they are not. Yeah. Like layout grids are considered styles in the way that they are built, but they are not usually attached to this. Here you can actually have things like sizing, spacing, color, border width, opacity, box shadow, typography, font family, font weight, line height, font size, letter spacing, paragraph spacing, text case, text decoration, composition, which is a level up, and then other. And then you can actually build a bunch of different things. You can create new tokens and attach them to specific values or aliases. I don't know which ones they are because I actually never even tried to play with this because it's way too complex for my little head, and I already have too much information here.
People know about it. Another thing, you can also use like as a team, you can have different sets, like for dark mode and light mode, and you can just change little stuff like colors, but use the same, they recognize the same pattern, and it's really useful. I'm not really familiar with it, I just use for simple stuff, but it's really powerful. And you can also export it to code. Never tried actually, but you have JSON, yeah, it's useful for when you have like on React or something, it's really useful.
And you can actually import styles.
You can import as well. It's pretty powerful. Check it out. It's cool.
And see the value of language. All of our colors are based on tokenized information. Therefore, the styles that we built in are based on token names, which is functional within the token plugin and everything else. There you go. And he also brought all the other things that I hadn't done yet, so it's really cool. Okay, more plugins, and I think this is where this thing started to break, right? The deck.
I just deleted it.
Oh, deleted that.
And the empty ones.
Can you please connect the slides?
Okay, started.
It's a very simple thing. Here we go. There we go. And this one is also not perfect, but there's also Batch Styler, which is a plugin that does very similar things to the styler. This one, although this one is actually really working. When working on these, common practice more and more for you to start with real content and visuals, or things that speed up your visuals and real content. If you don't have real content, or you have the first three on the left, usually are great for that. Content Reel from Microsoft already has pre-built libraries with a bunch of different things that you can input. Names, addresses, a bunch of different things. So if we go here, Content Reel is actually one of my favorite plugins of all times. If it works, because every now and then you go like, oh, you've been logged out. Yeah, but as you can see, basically there's a community-based system where people have been sharing these libraries. And if you click here, these are like a bunch of different names that they already built that are supposedly real names that Microsoft got, US phone numbers, US currencies, and these are like the favorite ones. But there's actually really big community of different things. So most likely, if you need something, someone already created. Cool thing about this, it works with text, it works with images. So there's things like avatars that already are pre-built. So you can basically create a really simple component. And here I'm just gonna do it real fast. Let's say that I'm putting this plus, just gonna copy this for the text. And make it smaller there, and just have a background so we can see it. I know this isn't pretty, but it works. Okay, but you can basically just go like this to this, and it should fill all with avatars. Select the text, email, and it just fills all with emails, random emails. So you get real data on your components. You get something that looks real. Gives you a better understanding of how your components are dealing with different variables. Things like giant text, short text, big images, bad images. There's a bunch of stuff that you can test out with this. And Content Reel also brings you the option, once you have an account, to create your own libraries. So if you have component names and stuff like that from different things, you can actually create your own. Again, I was signed out, but I have a couple of cool libraries here with a few texts and everything. There's also icons now, but I think it's only Microsoft at this point. They didn't have any others, but it kind of works really well. Then Data Lab, and that, I think that was yours.
Which one?
Data Lab.
Data Lab, yeah.
Yeah.
Data Lab, actually, I haven't had the opportunity to explore it really well, but you can actually use similar to Content Reel. You can use real data. You can connect an API or something and use real data. It's really cool, and you have like the same variable language that you can use to input numbers, for example, that you're seeing over there. And it's really cool. On the Content Reel, you have fake data. You can put your own. You can connect. You can put like a custom list with your data. But with Data Lab, you can use real data. It's really important to.
And on the alignment of real data, Google Sheet Sync, it's a really interesting tool. It's a great one to work with your teams if they don't really have very knowledgeable tools, or they're not as much knowledgeable with like really interesting new tools like this. You just need a Google Sheet table that it's shared publicly. People fill out the content. Let's say that you have a copywriter on the other end and you want to test out the content, but they don't have a Figma account. They can fill all the form fields on a form on Google Forms that attaches to the fields of a Google Sheet, and you can just sync the content and it updates on your designs. I do this a lot, and it's a really cool thing, and it's really simple. It just takes a little bit time to set up because of the way that the content is. Works really well, and I think there's an option. I still have to go back again to documentation where it actually just duplicates the content in the base of the amount of things that you have on the Excel spreadsheet. Therefore, on the Google Sheet, sorry. Therefore, if you have something like, okay, I know that I have a database of cards, but I don't know what I want to put in there. This thing gets images and text values, images through links on .jpeg or links and stuff like that. And it kind of just duplicates your component into as many variants already exist in the database, and it just uses the whole thing. So it's really cool. Then more on the filling the gaps things. Well, almost anyone that has been using Figma for a while probably knows about the Unsplash plugin. Really easy to get stock photography. But on the other end, Blush is a whole nother game. And if you guys have never heard of Blush, Blush is a company that not only has the Figma plugin, but also has a sketch plugin, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure if they actually got to create one for Adobe XD, but it's a really cool one. They basically have a gigantic library of personalized illustration libraries. So what happens is if you need an illustration, they have this really cool tool where you can generate illustrations real fast based on the style that you chose. So let's say that we want the fits, and let's say that we want a scene like meditating at home, and you have it here, but basically you also have options to control how the character kind of looks real fast with a lot of elements that might help you tell the story. You can also control the plants that are on the side, or you can just kind of shuffle and play around until you get the thing that you want. So this is really cool. Free version only includes medium PNGs. If you want to pay for it, there's a couple of plans, and you can be assured that all of these illustrations are author-based. So as you can see, all of them have the author. The author gets money back for the illustration, so you're paying a subscription service that actually shares the whole thing. So yeah, that's it. And you can see it works. You can actually just, if you have a blush illustration selected and you want to change it for another, you just need to click, and it goes like, boop, and it replaces the same object and puts a new one with the resolution that you want. And then there's really a lot of stuff that you can play with on styles. On the other end, Lucid icons that are good and easy. It's a plugin that uses Figma tools to Figma fast plugin tool where you can use tab. Wait, because Blush was open, I think this didn't work as I wanted. So if you use Lucid icons, you click on tab, and now you can, without opening the plugin, search for a quick set of icons, and they have a big block of icons. So you can just look at the list, or you can go like, I don't know, box, and there's a couple of other boxes here. I can click the box, and then if I click enter, it comes in the default size, but you can actually just decide what size it goes. So really easy for you to start, and it just brings you what you need. There you go. It comes on 24 because it's the default. Then Iconify, basically all the libraries that you could ever imagine that have icons exist on Iconify, including most of the updated Apple and Google material libraries are there. So it's a good plugin. And I think that was those the early on. Didn't we have a couple of others? See, the connections are broken.
No, it's good.
We still have time. I still have to show you something at the end, just because, yeah. But here is just speeding up things, making it fast. Woo. These are just usually functional and workflow improvement plugins. Some of them help a lot. Property randomizer. You have something where you want to test out some things, like let's say like a chart, and you want to just put different bars at the same different heights. You can use property randomizer to do stuff like that. Selection variants you saw, it allows you to select all the variants that exist underneath your first level. Find and replace.
Find and replace is like common find and replace, like in code or anything. You can text the file and replace it. It's really
useful. So what Figma doesn't bring by default,
exactly,
changes that.
Change text, retextifier, and content body. They are both. They are all plugins to select, find text, and change. Like you select a bunch of text, you can select. You can change every at the same time. They work with different styles, but really useful. You should check.
And last but not least, Simulator, if you've never used it, is a, well, how can I put it? It's almost a token-based finding objects thing. So you can actually select different properties of your objects and find layers that have similar properties like that. And I think that would be it. Okay, and now it's like final block of questions. Anything that we didn't cover, anything that you guys are still confused at, do you want to ask them before we do final remarks or not? And I don't know if we have any questions there.
I don't think so.
Q&A is empty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's already.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot to ask when we were talking about version history, what is your opinion about branches?
I like them, I don't use them. Here's the thing, branches are very specific and they are very heavy on the workflow, right? Like for people to actually use branches, it means that they are on a certain level of control, I would say, that it's not very common for any company. You can use them right from the ground up, but I'm honest to God, not everyone needs them. It is a pro feature or an org feature because most likely it is an org feature for most companies. It is something that only really code avid type of people probably already are used to. So that's it. And yeah, I would love to use them more, but I don't actually have the bandwidth to work with it at this point. I'm actually going back to the basics. And once we start updating the basics, we're going to use branches. So that's basically it, yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question about the change log that you guys have on the slide.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems I have is people ask, they want to know what has changed, but they also want to know why it has changed. So how you solve the problem with change log to explain why it has changed and people need to know more about it?
Okay, the why on change logs. That's a hard one because most likely demands manual work for you to actually give that context in the messages that you put in the versioning. But you can also put that as an add-on, make the workflow that you can build on Slack, because the part of the workflow or the message that goes on Slack is built inside Slack and not inside Figma. You can actually have those type of things like, oh, if you have any questions about the why, reach out, drop a message, drop a comment, tag the creator, something like that. And I think it's still the best option at this point. You really don't get much more than that because it's really hard to create those processes like that. You can probably try and make it even harder, like program it a little bit more than this. This is the most simple integration that we've been able to use and doesn't make it so that we need to create like a full-on new project or a full-on new piece of software to do this, right? We're using pieces and parts of Figma and Slack to do a thing that already exists. So yeah, that was it. But it's most likely very manual and very like you need to explain why. So you either leave it by default or you make it an extra information that people can request. But if they're documented, you shouldn't be worried, right? Because usually on the documentation, you explain what the components are for, and if needed, you explain why you changed them. So, any other question? No, everyone is just getting very sleepy because it's getting very dark. It's getting very. So, and it's a wrap, and it's closing. But before we go and invite, because there's a group, this company that is going to create an event that we're going to be sponsoring or being part, which is Avenue Code. And I don't know if anyone here knows because someone just gasped.
My brother works there.
Huh?
My brother works there.
Oh, cool. Your brother works there. Yeah, Avenue Code is having a physical and an online event on July 13 and 14. Both me and Julia will be speakers at that event. Julia will be on the 13th on the Extraordinary Women in Tech talk, and I'm going to be on the 14th on one of the talks. So if you guys want to join, we also got a little like special invite from their design lead, I guess. So let's just play the video real fast.
Hi, my name is Holly Kempenez, Director of Design and Creative Services at Avenue Code, a global digital transformation consultancy. I'm here to extend a personal invitation to join us this July in Lisbon for a first-of-its-kind design community building event called Dot Bridge. We'll enjoy a full day of design thinking workshops, hear talks from inspiring leaders in design, and bring together designers and creatives across a variety of design disciplines. It will be a unique opportunity to meet one another in person, share insights and learnings, and come away enriched and inspired. See you there.
And for anyone here, basically you guys get a free ticket if you want to join. It's mostly the 14th that it's going to be a physical event. You can use the QR code that it's there, or you can use the code Friends at Figma to access it. For those that are online, I think Friends of Figma is more than enough, but you can use that QR code to access the website. it's going to be a fun. It's going to be a fun day. I think it's a workshop in the morning, a couple of talks in the afternoon. There's some cool people there. I know that the presenters have not yet been announced, but it's going to be really cool. And yeah, thank you everyone online and in the real life, in the real world here, for being here. Thank you for being here up until the night has come to take us away. And thank you very much to the owner of the space here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for opening your home and space for us. And I hope that you guys enjoyed the workshop. I know that there's a lot of stuff here. I know that some stuff didn't went as well as I wanted, and I can speak here because I was the guy too late on doing the work on some of these things. That I'm really happy that you guys all showed up, and I hope you enjoyed it. Okay. And yeah,
if you are not on Slack yet, you can join our Slack. It's friend of Figma. You can go to our website and join. It's the easiest way.
Let's see if I can turn on lights. Is this working or is this outside lights?
It's better now.
Yeah, but we'll be fine. And yeah. Ooh, lights. Yeah. Okay, that's it. That's a wrap.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye, Julia.
Bye, Julia.
Stop the recording.